Listen to me very carefully because what I'm about to tell you is something 97% of men will go their entire lives without ever understanding. And the moment you hear it, really hear it, you will never look at a woman's behavior the same way again. Most of you have spent years thinking women don't notice you, thinking they ignore you, thinking they see right through you. But the truth is far more shocking. They do approach you. They do signal interest. They do try to get your attention. You've just been blind to the way they do it. What if I told you that a woman may have already hit on you multiple times and you had no idea? What if I told you that the question she asked wasn't random, wasn't polite, wasn't accidental, but intentional? What if the reason you think women don't choose you is not because you're uninteresting, not because you're older, not because you're unattractive, but because you never learned the language women actually use to show desire? Once you understand this, everything changes. You will stop doubting yourself, stop shrinking in conversations, stop assuming you're invisible. You will start seeing the reality that has always been in front of you. Women communicate interest softly, subtly, and intelligently. And if you don't recognize it, you lose opportunities that were already yours. This video will expose the exact signals women use, why they use them, and how instantly your confidence transforms when you finally understand what's really happening. If you've ever felt overlooked, ignored, or rejected, stay exactly where you are, because by the end of this video, you will see that the problem was never women. The problem was never you. The problem was awareness. And today, that awareness becomes yours. Keep watching. Most men go through life assuming they're being ignored, when in reality they simply don't understand the language of subtle interest. And this is where the tragedy begins. Because when a woman shows curiosity, she rarely does the hidden question women ask, first it with grand gestures or bold declarations. She doesn't walk up and confess attraction the way movies have conditioned you to expect. Instead, she communicates in small openings, soft cues, and gentle questions, signals that are quiet enough to miss, but powerful enough to shift an entire dynamic if recognized. When I say 97% of older men don't realize girls hit on them indirectly, I'm not exaggerating for effect. It's a psychological blind spot. Years of social conditioning teach men to assume disinterest unless a woman is dramatic about it. They assume silence means rejection, and they interpret subtlety as coincidence. But women, especially intuitive and emotionally intelligent ones, operate with a different form of communication. They test the environment before they reveal themselves. They look for safety before. They show vulnerability, and they initiate with curiosity rather than confession. Think about this clearly. When a girl asks you something seemingly ordinary, are you always this quiet? Or do you usually come here alone? She is not conducting a casual survey. She is evaluating your energy. She is checking if you have presence. She is seeing whether you can meet her at the level of emotional awareness she's offering. It's not the words that matter. It's the intention behind the words. But here's the part most men never understand. A woman do not waste emotional effort. They don't initiate conversations with men they feel nothing toward. A woman will remain silent if she's indifferent. She will look away if she isn't interested. She will create distance if she feels no connection. So the moment she asks a question, any question, she has already broken that barrier. She has already gone first. She has already chosen you as someone worth exploring, even if only slightly. But because her approach isn't loud, men dismiss it. They tell themselves, she's just being friendly. They convince themselves it's meaningless. And the reason they do this is simple. They've been trained to expect rejection, so they reject themselves before anyone else can. It's a defensive mechanism. It's easier to assume she meant nothing than to risk the discomfort of believing she meant something. However, when you fail to recognize these openings, you aren't avoiding rejection. You're avoiding opportunity. You're shutting down a moment that could have led to connection, chemistry, or even transformation. And this isn't just about dating. This is about your relationship with presence, awareness, and self-rust. Men who lack awareness miss more than signals. They miss life. Women value men who see what others overlook, men who can read the moment without fear, men who understand nuance. This is what emotional intelligence looks like, not reacting from insecurity, but responding from clarity. When she gives you a small opening, she's not testing your attractiveness. She's testing your consciousness. She wants to see if you're awake or if you're still living inside your psychological tricks to recognize attraction assumptions. She wants to know if you can lead a conversation with ease, if you can take her curiosity and convert it into connection. And here's the deeper truth. Women don't choose men based on age, youth, or superficial traits nearly as much as men think. They choose based on energy, confidence, presence, depth, emotional steadiness. When a man carries himself with awareness, he becomes magnetic regardless of the year he was born. When he listens carefully, observes calmly, and responds intentionally, he becomes someone a woman feels safe opening up to. Interest grows where emotional intelligence lives. So when she asks that simple question, understand the gravity of that moment. Understand that she's handing you the beginning of a link, a thread, an invitation. She's signaling that she sees something in you, even if you haven't seen it in yourself yet. And your ability to recognize that signal is what separates the men who remain invisible from the men who suddenly become undeniable. Stop telling yourself that women don't notice you. They do. You're just not noticing them back. And if there's one truth you take from this entire message, let it be. This opportunity is never loud. Only the prepared can hear it. When we talk about the way women show interest, most men imagine directness, something obvious, something unmistakable. But in reality, women rarely hit on men that way. They don't approach with bold statements. They don't initiate with clear declarations. Instead, they use subtle entry points, gentle openings, small conversational cues that allow them to signal interest without risking emotional exposure. And this is not because they are scared. It's because they are intelligent. They understand the social dynamics of attraction on a deeper level. Women by nature are more attuned to emotional nuance. They know when the atmosphere is safe and when it's not. They sense when a man carries confidence and when he carries insecurity. So instead of stepping directly into vulnerability, they test the water with something light. What appears to be a harmless question or a simple comment, it's not because they don't know what they want. It's because they want to see who you are. Before they give more of themselves, think about how they do it. They'll say something that sounds casual like, "Do you come here often?" Or, "What made you choose this place today?" To an unaware man, it sounds like nothing more than polite conversation. But to a man with presence, it is a signal. It is a hint. It is the invitation to take the lead. She is giving you an opening without putting herself in a position where rejection can wound her deeply. It's a safe way to show interest because if you respond poorly, she can always frame it as small talk rather than vulnerability. And the brilliance of this psychologically is that women maintain control of their emotional safety without shutting down the possibility of connection. They initiate, but in a way that feels natural. They show interest, but in a way that protects their dignity. This is what most men misunderstand. They assume a woman will only show interest if she is extremely obvious. But obviousness is not feminine. Subtlety is indirect. Initiation is part of the feminine language of attraction. Quiet, graceful, intentional. You have to understand something deeper here. Women do not want how to respond without overthinking to chase. They want to choose, and there is a difference. They might initiate, but they still expect the man to guide the energy forward. When she asks you that simple question, she is not trying to start a long conversation. She is trying to see if you have the emotional intelligence to recognize the moment for what it is. She is looking for your ability to respond with confidence confidence, clarity, and presence. What happens in most cases is the opposite. Men overthink, they freeze, they assume she is being friendly or polite. They shrink their energy instead of expanding into the moment, and without even realizing it, they let the opportunity fall apart. A woman will not repeat the sign. She will not hit on a man twice. She will not continue investing in a moment that he doesn't understand, not because she's impatient, but because the misunderstanding itself tells her everything she needs to know about his awareness. This is why I always say women hit on men indirectly. But it is not the indirectness that causes the missed opportunity. It is the man's lack of presence. She will drop the seed, but she will not water it for you. She will offer the spark, but she will not build the fire. That part is your responsibility. And beneath all of this is something even more profound. Women do not want to approach men with masculine energy. They do not want to lead from the front. Doing so takes them out of their natural emotional rhythm. That's why their signals are gentle. That's why their curiosity is soft. That's why their approach feels subtle rather than assertive. It allows them to remain in their feminine while still showing genuine interest. It is a delicate balance, one that only a conscious man can truly recognize and appreciate. But when you do recognize it, everything changes. You stop doubting yourself. You stop assuming you're unseen. You stop shrinking in moments that were meant to expand you. Suddenly, those small interactions that you once brushed off become moments of possibility, moments that could lead to connection, chemistry, or something meaningful. And the more aware you become, the more you realize how often women were initiating without you ever noticing. So the next time a woman asks you a simple question, don't dismiss it. Don't underestimate it. Don't label it as coincidence. Ask yourself why she chose you out of everyone around her. Ask yourself what she saw in your energy that made her open that door in the first place. Because the truth is simple. Women don't hit on men loudly. They do it softly, strategically, and with intention. And the men who learn to hear the quiet are the ones who never miss the moment. Remember this, the feminine never shouts, she invites, and only the attentive man hears the invitation. When we talk about subtle signals, most men obsess over the words. They break down the sentence, the time, the timing, trying to decode what a woman means. But the truth is, it's not the question she asks that matters. It's the version of you she's asking it to. Women aren't evaluating your vocabulary. They're the mistakes men make and why it costs them evaluating your presence. They're studying the energy behind your response, the stability in your posture, the clarity in your eyes. They're watching to see if you crumble under pressure or if you stand firm in who you are. A woman's interest becomes meaningless if the man she's speaking to has no inner foundation. And this is where psychological depth comes in. Women don't connect through logic first. They connect through emotional resonance. They connect through a man's sense of self. So when she gives you that small opening, when she asks something light, something seemingly innocent, she's actually checking the strength of your identity. She wants to know who you are when you're caught off guard. She wants to know how you hold yourself in the unscripted moments when you don't have time to perform or pretend. That's why the question doesn't matter. She's looking for the man behind the answer. Presence isn't about being loud. It's not about dominating the room or forcing attention. Presence is the quiet confidence of someone who knows himself without needing external validation. It's the grounded energy of someone who doesn't seek approval because he already approves of who he is. And this is the energy women respond to. This is the energy that makes even a simple conversation feel safe, engaging, and magnetic. Imagine two men receiving the same question. One feels nervous, doubts himself, gives a short reply, looks away, or over-explains. The other answers calmly, comfortably, with warmth and certainty. Same words, two entirely different energies, and a woman can sense that difference within seconds. The first man's response tells her he's unsure of himself. The second man's presence tells her he's anchored, mature, emotionally composed, without Even realizing it, she will lose interest in the first and feel drawn to the second, not because he's better looking, but because he's better grounded. This is why emotional presence is far more attractive than physical traits. You can be handsome and still invisible if your energy is uncertain. You can be older and still magnetic if your presence is strong. Women don't seek perfection, they seek clarity. Clarity of intention, clarity of mindset, clarity of identity. And the irony is most men think a confident presence comes from impressing others, but it actually comes from impressing yourself. It comes from knowing your values, having boundaries, understanding your worth, and carrying a level of self-respect that can't be shaken by a single interaction. A woman can sense instantly whether your confidence is genuine or if it's a performance. Real confidence has no urgency. It has no neediness. It doesn't chase, force, or rush. It simply exists. When you embody this kind of presence, every question she asks becomes an opportunity not to prove yourself, but to reveal yourself. You're not trying to be impressive. You're simply being authentic. And authenticity, aligned with self-awareness, is one of the strongest attractors in building confidence that women notice human psychology. But presence also requires something deeper, emotional stillness. If your mind is chaotic, if you're constantly questioning your worth, if you're afraid of making mistakes, that energy leaks into your interactions. Women don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be calm. They need you to be steady. They need to feel that your inner world is not easily shaken, because when your presence is grounded, she knows she can relax into hers. So the next time a woman gives you that small opening, realize she's not evaluating your answer. She's evaluating your essence. She's evaluating whether you can carry a moment with maturity. She's evaluating whether your energy matches the level of connection she's seeking. She's evaluating whether your presence feels safe, attractive, and confident. And if you can meet that moment with certainty, not arrogance, not overcompensation, but quiet authenticity, everything shifts. You become the kind of man who is remembered, not overlooked. You become someone who naturally inspires interest. You become someone who changes the dynamic of any conversation simply by being fully, unapologetically present. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what she asks, it's about who you are when she asks it. Remember, this S presence isn't something you perform, it's something you become. One of the saddest patterns I see in men today is how quickly they shut themselves down long before the world ever does. They assume rejection where there is none. They label indifference where curiosity exists. They convince themselves a woman isn't interested even when she's the one who initiated the moment. And this isn't because women are impossible to read. It's because men carry old stories about themselves, stories of inadequacy, insecurity, or past rejection. And they use those stories as filters for every interaction that comes toward them. When a woman opens a conversation, most men don't allow themselves to believe it means anything, not because she's unclear, but because he's already prepared for disappointment. He's already braced for failure, and that mental preparation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The mind creates the reality it expects. If you walk into every interaction expecting rejection, you will respond in a way that kills the very connection you secretly want to build. Think about this on a deeper psychological level. Human beings don't respond to the world as it is. They respond to the world as they believe it is. When a man has internalized years of doubt, he interprets everything through that limited lens. If she smiles, he thinks she's just being polite. If she asks a question, he thinks she's bored. If she compliments something small, he tells himself she does that with everyone. What he doesn't realize is that these defensive thoughts aren't protecting him. They're sabotaging him. They're shutting down opportunities that were already his. This is why I always emphasize the importance of self-awareness. A man who does not understand the stories running in his head will live trapped inside them. He will sabotage good moments because he believes he doesn't deserve them. He will disconnect from women not because they rejected him, but because he rejected the possibility too early. The real life examples and case studies tragedy isn't that women don't approach these men. The tragedy is that when women do approach, the men are too emotionally guarded to recognize it. And here's something most men never confront. Avoidance feels safer than vulnerability. If you tell yourself she's not interested, you never have to risk showing interest. If you assume it's nothing, you never have to face uncertainty. If you downplay her signals, you never have to expose your desire. So shutting down becomes a habit, a protective shield that eventually becomes a prison. Women can sense this. They can feel when a man has closed off his energy. They can feel when he doesn't believe he's worth being approached. And that energy alone can push them away, not because they weren't interested, but because they don't feel invited. Women don't want to fight against a man's insecurities. They want to connect with a man who is open, aware, and emotionally available enough to meet the moment with courage. When a man doubts himself, it shows in the way he speaks, the way he stands, the way he responds. It shows in hesitation, in overthinking, in awkwardness, in withdrawal. Women don't need you to be flawless. They just need you to be present. But presence requires confidence, and confidence requires self-rust. Without self-rust, every opportunity becomes a threat instead of a possibility. The saddest part of all this is that men don't realize how close they are to the very connection they think is impossible. Sometimes the only thing standing between a man and a meaningful moment is a single belief. I'm not good enough. And that belief is not based on truth. It's based on old conditioning, old wounds, old experiences that have nothing to do with the woman standing in front of him right now. If a man could silence those old stories for just a moment, if he could respond with calm instead of fear, if he could allow himself to believe that her interest might actually be real, the entire interaction would transform. He would show up differently. He would speak with a little more ease. He would look her in the eyes instead of looking away. He would allow the moment to unfold instead of killing it before it begins. And the woman would feel that shift. She would sense the openness, the confidence, the willingness to receive what she is offering. And that is the energy women gravitate toward the man who is available to the moment, not hiding from it. You don't lose opportunities because women don't like you. You lose them because your fear whispers louder than your awareness. Remember this: the moment you stop rejecting yourself, the world stops rejecting you. So many men blame age for everything they think they've lost. They blame the passing years for their fading confidence, their reduced opportunities, their sense that women no longer notice them. But age is not the enemy. Age is not the obstacle. Age is only a mirror. It reflects who you've become. The real issue isn't that you're older. The real issue is that you've convinced yourself that being older somehow disqualifies you from being seen, desired, or admired. And that belief, more than anything else, is what pushes opportunities away. Women don't lose interest because a man has aged. They lose interest because a man starts behaving as if he's already past his prime. He starts moving like life is behind him instead of within him. Final tips to never miss her signals. Again, begins shrinking his personality, lowering his expectations, dimming his energy, acting like he's invisible even before he enters a room. But attraction has never been about the number of years you've lived. It's always been about the quality of energy you carry. A grounded, confident, self-assured, older man can be far more attractive than a younger man who has no direction, no stability, no identity. And women know this. Women feel this. Women respond to this. What draws them in is not youth. It's depth. It's maturity. It's emotional intelligence. It's a man who has lived long enough to understand himself, long enough to stop pretending, long enough to show up with authenticity instead of insecurity. When a woman looks at an older man, she doesn't see age the way men think. She sees experience. She sees intention. She sees a man who has outgrown the chaos of youth. She sees someone who can listen instead of react, someone who can lead without dominating, someone who has the patience to understand her and the strength to hold space. That kind of presence is rare, and rarity has always been attractive. But here's the deeper truth most men avoid. Women lose interest in older men when those men lose interest in themselves. When a man stops investing in his growth, his health, his mindset, his passion, his curiosity, he becomes energetically dull, not older dull. And dullness kills attraction faster than age ever could. Women don't want a man who has surrendered to life. They want a man who continues to evolve, who continues to rise, who continues to carry ambition, purpose, and vitality regardless of the year on his birth certificate. Confidence becomes different as a man ages. It's no longer loud, it's no longer flashy. It becomes subtle, controlled, refined. It becomes quiet assurance instead of noise. And that quiet assurance is intoxicating to women because it signals emotional safety. It signals reliability. It signals a man who knows who he is and doesn't need external validation to feel worthy. And when a woman senses this level of self-awareness, her attraction grows not because he's older, but because he's certain. Certainty is magnetic. Self-rust is magnetic. A man who accepts his age but refuses to let it limit him becomes one of the most compelling presences in any room. He carries a kind of confidence that younger men simply haven't earned yet. But this mindset doesn't just appear. It requires a shift. It requires letting go of the belief that your best days are behind you. It requires recognizing that you still have more to give, more to create, more to become. It requires understanding that attraction isn't just something you receive, it's something you generate through your mindset, through your habits, through your presence, through your ability to stay alive to your own potential. Women are not looking for perfection. They're looking for presence. They're looking for a man who is still awake, still engaged, still alive in his own life. A man who doesn't see age as a limitation, but as an advantage. A man who doesn't shrink himself to fit the stereotypes of older men, but expands himself to exceed them. The moment you stop seeing age as a problem, women stop seeing it too, because age doesn't turn them away. Insecurity does. Defeat does. A man giving up on himself does. But a man who owns his age with strength, self-respect, and clarity, that man becomes unforgettable. So stop looking at the calendar and start looking at your character. Stop asking if your conclusion and key takeaways too old, and start asking if you're fully alive, because attraction has never belonged to the young. It has always belonged to the confident. Remember this, your age isn't the limitation. Your belief about your age is